The Moonfire Hall had never burned so bright. Valira pressed her spine against the cold stone of the minstrel's gallery, her fingers gripping the carved railing until her knuckles blanched white. Below her, 1,000 wolves filled the ceremonial chamber, their bodies packed shoulder to shoulder, their faces upturned toward the dais where the throne of Ashenmoor stood draped in silver and shadow. Tonight, the Alpha would choose his Luna. She should not have come. Every rational thought screamed at her to remain in the hidden chamber beneath the eastern tower, the one Calum had prepared for her 3 moons ago when the council first began demanding he take a mate. He had kissed her there just this morning, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious, something sacred. "One more night," he had whispered against her lips, "one more night of pretending you are not already mine, and then the world will know." Valira's hand drifted to her lower belly, where the swell of new life had begun to show beneath her loosened gown. Not 1 life, 2. The healer had confirmed it a week ago, her weathered face breaking into a rare smile as she pressed her palm to Valira's womb. Twins. She had planned to tell Calum tonight, after the ceremony, had imagined his face when he learned that their secret love had borne fruit twice over, had pictured him falling to his knees, pressing his ear to her belly, laughing with the joy she knew lived beneath his stoic exterior. But he had sent no word today, no messenger, no stolen note tucked beneath her pillow. Only silence. And so she had come to watch. The mark on her inner thigh burned with familiar warmth, and Valira pressed her palm against it through the fabric of her dress. Calum had given her that mark 6 months ago, in the sacred grove beyond the pack's borders where no wolf could witness, no tongue could whisper. His teeth had broken her skin with exquisite care, his wolf claiming her in the old way, the way that could not be undone by politics or protocol. "You are mine," he had growled against her bleeding flesh, his eyes blazing gold as his wolf surged forward. "Before the ancestors, before the moon herself, you are mine, my mate, my Luna, the mother of my heirs." She had believed every word. A horn sounded low and resonant, and the crowd fell silent. Valira's heart slammed against her ribs as the great doors at the far end of the hall swung open. Calum entered. Even from this distance, even shrouded in shadow, he commanded the room with his presence. He stood taller than any wolf in the realm, his shoulders broad beneath the ceremonial black cloak that swept the floor behind him. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and the hard angles of his face caught the torchlight like a blade catching the sun. But something was wrong. Valira leaned forward, her brow furrowing. She knew the way Calum moved, knew it as intimately as she knew her own heartbeat. He walked like a predator, all coiled power and fluid grace, every step deliberate, every motion purposeful. Tonight, he moved like a puppet on strings. His gait was stiff, mechanical. His arms hung at his sides without their usual tension, and his head remained fixed forward, never turning, never scanning the crowd the way an alpha's instincts demanded. Valira's mark flared with sudden heat, and she gasped, pressing harder against the scar on her inner thigh. Something was wrong with their bond. She could feel it, a strange hollowness where his presence should have resonated, a void where his emotions should have bled into hers. It was as if she were reaching for him through fog. Calum ascended the dais and turned to face the assembly. The Elder Prime rose from his seat, ancient and withered, his voice carrying across the hall with supernatural clarity. "Wolves of Ashenmoor, for 300 years this pack has stood as the shield of the northern realms. Tonight, our Alpha shall choose the she-wolf who will rule beside him, who will bear his heirs, who will guide our people through whatever darkness lies ahead." The crowd rumbled with anticipation. Valira's nails bit crescents into her palms. "The candidates shall present themselves." A side door opened, and 5 women in flowing white emerged. Valira recognized them all. Daughters of the council families, each one groomed from birth for this possibility. She had served them tea when she was still a nobody, still the orphaned daughter of a disgraced warrior. Before Calem had found her gathering herbs in the forest and everything had changed. But it was the fifth woman who turned Valira's blood to ice, Sarilith. Her sister walked at the center of the group, her silver-gold hair cascading down her back like moonlight on water. She was 3 years older than Valira, 3 years more beautiful, 3 years more cruel. They shared a mother, but not a father. And Sarilith had never let Valira forget which bloodline carried worth. What was her sister doing among the candidates? Sarilith was not of noble birth. Their mother had been a seamstress, their fathers common soldiers. There was no world in which Sarilith should have been permitted to. And then Valira saw her sister's hand brush against the elder prime's sleeve, saw the almost imperceptible nod that passed between them, saw the smile that curled Sarilith's painted lips as she took her place before the throne. A smile of triumph. A smile of someone who already knew she had won. No. Valira's hand flew to her belly, to the lives growing inside her, to the proof of everything Calem had promised. He would not choose Sarilith. He could not. The bond between them was unbreakable, witnessed by the moon herself. No alpha could claim two mates. The moment he announced Valira, the moment he revealed the mark he had given her, every wolf in this hall would know that his choice had been made long ago. She watched Calem's face for any sign of the man she loved, any flicker of warmth, of recognition, of the secret they shared. His expression was carved from granite. His eyes, those amber eyes that softened with love when he looked upon her, stared ahead with the emptiness of a corpse. Calem, Alpha of Ashenmoor, blood of the first Shadow Wolves. The Elder Prime's voice echoed through the hall like a death knell. You have heard the Council's counsel. You have reviewed the alliances and the bloodlines. Your pack awaits your choice. The silence that followed was absolute. Not a breath, not a whisper. 1,000 wolves holding perfectly still while the future of their realm balanced on a single word. Valira stopped breathing. Her mark seared against her inner thigh, pulsing in rhythm with her thundering heart. She pushed her presence toward the bond with everything she had, desperate to feel him, to reach him, to remind him of moonlit promises and sacred vows. Nothing came back but fog. Calem stepped forward. I choose. His voice was hollow. Wrong. Like words spoken by a man in a trance, reciting a script he did not understand. Valira's fingernails drew blood from her palms. Sarilith, daughter of the Eastern Quarter. The name struck Valira like a physical blow. The hall erupted in celebration. Wolves howled their approval. Council members embraced. The political impossibility of a common-born Luna was drowned beneath the tide of voices praising the Alpha's wisdom, his boldness, his willingness to choose for love rather than lineage. Love. Valira watched her sister ascend the dais steps with the grace of a serpent, her white gown trailing behind her like a bridal shroud. Sarilith's smile had widened into something savage, something victorious. And then her sister's gaze lifted. Directly to the minstrel's gallery, directly to Valira. Their eyes met across the chaos of celebration, and Valira saw the truth written in her sister's face, the knowing, the satisfaction, the cruelty she had hidden beneath beauty for 23 years. Sarilith had known. She had known about the secret bond, about the mark, about the child growing in Valira's womb. And she had used that knowledge to orchestrate this moment, to steal the man her sister loved, to claim a throne that was never meant to be hers. Valira's mark exploded with agony. She doubled over, a scream tearing from her throat that was swallowed by the cacophony below. Fire raced through her veins, centered on the scar where Calem's teeth had claimed her, spreading outward until her entire body convulsed with pain. Through tear-blurred vision, she watched Calem take her sister's hand, watched him raise it to his lips in the traditional gesture of acceptance. Watched Sarilith turn to face the crowd, radiant and triumphant, while the man Vailira loved stood beside her like a statue. He did not search the galleries for her hiding place. He did not hesitate. He did not seem to remember that she existed. Something inside Vailira splintered. Not broke, not shattered. Splintered like a tree struck by lightning, fractures spreading through heartwood that had stood strong for years, threatening to collapse under the weight of a single devastating blow. The twins moved inside her, both of them at once, as if responding to their mother's anguish. A sharp kick from the left, a flutter from the right. Two hearts beating beside her broken one. Two lives that did not yet know their father had just abandoned them before they drew their first breath. Vailira pressed both hands to her belly and stumbled backward into the darkness of the gallery passage. She could not watch anymore. Could not stand in the shadows while her sister was crowned Luna, while Calem was bound to another, while every dream she had dared to dream turned to ash in her mouth. She ran. The servants' corridors were empty. Every wolf in the pack gathered to witness the ceremony. Vailira's bare feet slapped against cold stone as she fled. One hand braced against the wall, the other wrapped protectively around her children. His children. The children he had sworn would rule Ashenmoor beside him. The children he had just betrayed. Vailira reached her hidden chamber in a haze of grief and fury. She had almost nothing to pack. The life of a secret lover afforded few possessions. A spare dress, her mother's bone-handled comb, the dried sprig of moonflower Calem had picked for her the night he first said he loved her. She stared at the flower for a long moment. Then she let it fall to the floor. There was no room for sentiment where she was going. No space for mementos of a love that had been a lie. She needed to move, needed to run, needed to put as many miles between herself and Ashenmoor as possible before dawn revealed her absence. Vailira pulled her travel cloak from its hook and wrapped it around her shoulders, her fingers fumbling with the clasp. The fabric was thick enough to hide the swell of her belly, to disguise her as just another traveler on winter roads. A widow, perhaps. A woman fleeing grief. It would not even be a lie. She paused at the narrow window, looking out at the bonfires being lit across the capital. Celebration fires. Luna fires. The wolves of Ashenmoor howled their joy to the sky while she stood in darkness with salt drying on her cheeks. Somewhere in that great hall, Calem was accepting congratulations for his wise choice. Somewhere, Sarilith was already planning their mating ceremony. Somewhere, the council was toasting to alliances and futures that did not include a common-born girl with shadow magic in her blood and an alpha's heirs in her womb. No one would look for her. No one would care. Vailira pressed her palm to the frosted glass, feeling the cold bite into her skin. "Goodbye," she whispered to the night. "May she make you happy, since I could not." The words tasted like poison. She turned from the window, slipped through the door, and descended the hidden staircase that led to the servants' gate. The guards were gone, drawn to the ceremony like every other wolf. The path lay open before her, unguarded, unwatched. She stepped through into the winter dark and did not look back. Behind her, in a tower she could no longer see, amber eyes snapped open with sudden clarity. Calem gasped like a drowning man breaking the surface, his body jackknifing forward, his hands clawing at his chest where the bond had just screamed with sudden tearing loss. The fog that had shrouded his mind shattered. Memories crashed through him, fragments of the past hours, the ceremony, the words he had spoken, the woman he had... No, not Vailira, not his mate. A roar of anguish tore from his throat, so raw and broken that wolves across the city lifted their heads in shared grief. His eyes blazed gold as his wolf surged forward, desperate to find her. He staggered toward the window, his vision blurring, his control fracturing with every heartbeat. In the courtyard below, the bonfires blazed in celebration. And beyond the city walls, a single cloaked figure disappeared into the tree line, carrying with her everything Calem had ever wanted. By the time he reached her empty chamber, Vailira was already gone. Only her mother's comb remained, lying on the cold floor beside a dried moonflower. And the scent of her tears. 4 months had passed since Valera died. Not her body. Her body had survived the winter roads, the frozen rivers, the endless miles between Ashenmore and the village of Mistfen. Her body had found shelter in an abandoned cottage at the edge of the marshlands, had learned to survive on foraged roots and the coin she earned brewing remedies for the local farmers. But the woman she had been, the woman who had loved and trusted and believed in moonlit promises, that woman had perished on the night of the Luna ceremony. In her place stood someone harder, quieter, a widow named Marin who had fled a cruel husband, or so she told anyone who asked about the swell beneath her dress. The villagers of Mistfen were kind in their rough way, asking few questions, accepting her healing teas and poultices without demanding her history. She had almost begun to believe she might survive this. The twins grew stronger with each passing week. Valera felt them constantly now, two distinct presences moving within her, responding to her moods, her fears, her rare moments of peace. The village midwife had confirmed what Valera already knew, that 2 lives grew where one should have been, and had warned her that the birth would be difficult. Valera did not care about difficult. She cared only about keeping them safe. But the nights were another matter. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard him. Valera. His voice, calling from somewhere vast and dark. Not a memory. Not a dream. Something more. Something that felt like reaching, like searching, like a man drowning and screaming for the only hand that could save him. Valera, where are you? She woke gasping every night, her mark burning against her inner thigh, her heart racing with emotions that did not belong to her. Rage, desperation. A grief so profound it threatened to swallow her whole. The bond should have severed. When a mated wolf chose another, the claiming mark faded within weeks. The connection dissolved. Both wolves were freed to forge new bonds, new futures, and new lives. Valera's mark had not faded. If anything, it had grown darker, more defined. The scar tissue had taken on an almost silver sheen, and the heat it radiated kept her warm even on the coldest nights. She did not understand. She did not want to understand. Understanding meant hope, and hope was a poison she could not afford to drink. "You are haunting me," she whispered to the darkness one night, her hands pressed to her belly. "Even now, even after everything, you will not let me go." The twins kicked in unison, as if responding to her words, or to his presence. A knock at her door shattered the silence. Valera's blood turned to ice. No one visited at this hour. The villagers knew better than to disturb the widow after dark. Her hand closed around the iron knife she kept beneath her pillow as she rose from her bed, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Another knock. More urgent. "Mistress Marin." A child's voice, high and frightened. "Please, you must come. The traitors have arrived, and they bring terrible news." Valera's grip on the knife loosened. Young Pip, the miller's son, who had taken to following her like a duckling since she had cured his mother's cough. She opened the door. The boy's face was pale in the moonlight, his eyes wide with the particular excitement children found in catastrophe. "What news?" Valera asked. "From Ashenmore?" Pip breathed. "They say the Alpha has gone mad." Her chest tightened, breath catching in her throat. "Mad?" she heard herself ask. Pip nodded vigorously. "The traitors say he tears apart villages searching for someone, a woman. No one knows who she is or what she did, only that the Alpha will destroy anything that stands between him and finding her." The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "They say his eyes have turned to gold and never shift back. They say his wolf has nearly consumed him. They say the new Luna weeps in her chambers while her mate howls at the moon every night, calling a name no one recognizes." Valera's hand found the doorframe, found something solid to hold as the ground shifted beneath her. "What name?" she whispered. but she already knew the answer. Valera, Pip said. He calls for someone named Valera. 3 days after the trader's visit, the wolves arrived. Valera spotted them at dawn, 3 massive shadows standing at the tree line where the marsh met the forest. They made no move toward her cottage, no aggressive posture, no threat. They simply watched and waited. She considered running. The marshes were treacherous, full of hidden paths that only locals knew. She could lose herself in the mist, could vanish into the wetlands where no wolf could track her scent. But her belly was too heavy, her body too slow. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the fear and the fury, a voice whispered that running would solve nothing. The wolves had found her, which meant he had found her. By midday, a man walked out of the forest alone. He was older than Kalum, his dark hair streaked with gray, his face weathered by decades of war and weather. But his eyes, a deep amber that marked him as one of the Alpha's inner circle, held something that looked almost like relief. Valera met him on her threshold with an iron knife in her hand and murder in her heart. "If you have come to drag me back in chains," she said, "I will make you bleed for every step." The man stopped 10 paces from her door. "My lady, I am Corvin, second to the Alpha of Ashenmoor. I have not come to drag you anywhere." "Then why have you come?" "To beg for your help." Corvin's voice cracked on the words. "To tell you the truth that no one in that cursed pack has had the courage to speak. And to warn you that your life is in danger." Valera laughed. The sound was brittle, sharp, nothing like the laugh she had once possessed. "My life has been in danger since the night your Alpha chose my sister over me. Since he threw away our bond like it meant nothing. Since he did not choose her." The words struck Valera like a blow. "What?" Corvin's face twisted with something between grief and rage. "The night of the Luna ceremony, someone poisoned the Alpha's wine, a compound derived from nightshade and wolfsbane, mixed with something else we have yet to identify. It did not kill him. It did something far worse." Valera's knife trembled in her grip. What did it do? It severed him from his wolf, from his instincts, from the bond that tied him to you. Corvin's amber eyes burned with intensity. "For 3 days, our Alpha was a puppet. A hollow shell wearing his face, speaking words that were not his own. He remembers nothing of the ceremony, nothing of choosing your sister. The first thing he knew after drinking that wine was waking in his chambers with Serelith beside him and your scent fading from the castle." The knife slipped from Valera's fingers. It struck the ground, but she did not hear it. Could not hear anything over the roaring in her ears. "You are lying," she whispered. "This is a trick. Some scheme my sister has devised to— Your sister is the one who poisoned him." Silence. Valera stared at the man before her, searching for deception, for manipulation, for any sign that these words were weapons designed to wound her further. She found only truth. "Serelith came to the castle 6 months ago," Corvin continued. "She presented herself as your estranged sister, claimed she wished to reconcile. The Alpha permitted her to stay out of love for you." His jaw tightened. "We did not know she had been meeting with the Elder Prime in secret. Did not know she had promised him power and wealth in exchange for his support. Did not know she had been studying the old poisons and binding spells, the ones our ancestors used to control wolves during the Blood Wars." Valera's legs would not hold her. She sank to her knees in the mud before her cottage, her hands flying to her belly where the twins had gone suddenly, terribly still. "She knew," Valera breathed. "She knew about the bond, about the mark, about everything," Corvin finished. "She knew, and she used that knowledge to destroy you both." He knelt before her, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "My lady, the Alpha is dying. Not his body, his soul. His wolf has been fighting for dominance since the moment the poison cleared, and without you, without the completed bond, he cannot win that fight. He will go feral within weeks. And when he does, Sarilith will have him put down like a rabid dog and claim the pack for herself. No. The word tore from Valeera's throat with force that surprised them both. No, she repeated. I will not let her have him. I will not let her win. Corvin's eyes flickered to her swollen belly. There is more you should know. The Elder Prime commands the ceremonial guard, the wolves sworn to protect the throne itself. If he moves against the Alpha, they follow him, not the crown. And 3 days ago, we intercepted a message sent from Ashenmore to a mercenary company in the Eastern Territories. He withdrew a folded parchment from his coat. Valeira's hands shook as she took it. The seal was broken, but she recognized the sigil pressed into the dark wax, a serpent eating its own tail, the mark of the Elder Prime's faction, now claimed by Sarilith as her own. The message inside contained only 2 lines. The shadow-blooded whore has been located. Eliminate her, and the abomination she carries before the next moon rises. As Valeira read the words 3 times before their meaning penetrated the fog of shock. Abominations. Her children. Her sister had called her children abominations. Something shifted inside Valeira's chest. Something dark and cold and ancient. Something she had spent her entire life suppressing, terrified of what it might mean. The shadows at the edge of her vision began to move. My lady? Corvin's voice seemed distant. Your eyes? Valeira looked up at him, and the second of Ashenmore flinched backward. How long? She asked, and her voice carried harmonics that did not belong to any human throat, until the assassins arrive? Corvin recovered his composure with the discipline of a seasoned warrior, but Valeira had seen the fear in his eyes, had seen the way he looked at her like she was something other than the broken woman who had answered her door. Good. Let him be afraid. We do not know how many were sent, Corvin admitted. The mercenary company Sarilith hired, they are called the Hollow Fangs, wolfless men who kill our kind for coin. They mask their scent with grave dust and nightshade, making them ghosts to our noses. His expression darkened. We do not know if your sister sent only mercenaries, or if she follows behind them to ensure the task is completed. They could be here already. Valeira turned toward the marsh. The mist that always clung to the wetlands had thickened in the past hour, swirling in patterns that had nothing to do with wind. Shapes moved within it. Human shapes. Too many to count. Ancestors protect us, Corvin breathed. The 3 wolves who had watched her cottage burst from the tree line, their forms shifting mid-stride into armed men who flanked Corvin with weapons drawn. 3 against however many shadows moved in the mist. It was not enough. You need to run, Corvin said. There is a path through the marsh. I am 8 months pregnant with twins. Valeira cut him off. I cannot run. I can barely walk without losing my breath. She straightened her spine, her hands pressing flat against her belly. If they want me, they will have to come and take me. My lady. I am not your lady. Valeira's voice hardened. I am the woman your Alpha claimed and lost. I am the mother of his heirs, and I am done running from my sister's cruelty. The shadows in the mist drew closer. Valeira could see them clearly now, men in dark leather, their faces hidden behind masks of black cloth, their hands carrying blades that gleamed with an oily sheen. Poison. Of course Sarilith would send them with poisoned weapons. A single cut would be enough to kill a pregnant woman and the children she carried. Get behind me, Corvin commanded, his body shifting into a battle stance. But Valeira did not move. The power she had suppressed since childhood stirred in her chest, awakened by the threat to her children, demanding release. She had spent 23 years hiding this gift, terrified that someone would discover what she was. Shadow-blooded, her mother had called it. Cursed, her sister had whispered when they were children, before the jealousy had curdled into hatred. But she was tired of hiding, tired of running, tired of letting others decide her fate. The first assassin emerged from the mist with his blade raised. Valeira lifted her hand and the shadows answered. They erupted from the ground like living things, tendrils of darkness that wrapped around the assassin's legs and yanked him downward. His scream cut short as the shadows covered his mouth, his eyes, his entire body disappearing into a pool of black that had not existed a moment before. The other assassins hesitated. Corvin stared at her with something between awe and terror. "What are you?" he whispered. Valera did not answer. She did not know the answer. Only knew that the shadows obeyed her, that her children's hearts beat strong and fast inside her, that she would die before she let her sister take anything else from her. But the power was draining her. Already she could feel her strength fading, her vision blurring at the edges. She was not trained for this, did not know how to wield this gift without burning herself alive. The remaining assassins seemed to sense her weakness. They advanced as one, a dozen men with poisoned blades, too many for Corvin and his 3 wolves to stop. Valera's hand dropped to her side. The shadows flickered and died. And somewhere in the distance, growing closer with every heartbeat, she heard a sound that shook the very earth beneath her feet. A howl, not a wolf's howl. Something larger, something older. Something that spoke of rage beyond reason and love beyond death. The assassins heard it too. Their formation shattered as they spun toward the forest, toward the source of that terrible sound. And from the tree line, darkness incarnate exploded into the light. The creature that burst from the forest was not a wolf. It was a nightmare given form. Black fur absorbed the light rather than reflecting it, creating a void in the shape of a massive beast. Golden fire blazed where eyes should have been, and shadows trailed from its body like smoke from a dying flame. It stood twice the height of any natural wolf, its paws leaving scorched prints in the earth, its presence pressing against Valera's senses like a physical weight. Calum. But not Calum, not entirely. This was his wolf unleashed, his animal nature pushed to the edge of feral madness by months of separation from his mate. The man she had loved was buried somewhere inside that darkness, fighting to maintain control, and losing. The beast did not slow as it reached the first assassin. Jaws closed around the man's torso with a wet crunch. A shake of that massive head, and the body flew into the mist in 2 separate pieces. The remaining assassins scattered. It did not matter. The shadow wolf moved like darkness itself, appearing behind one man, then another, and then 3 at once. Screams filled the marsh. Blood painted the cattails. In the space of 30 heartbeats, 11 men died, their bodies torn apart by a creature that showed no mercy, no hesitation, no hint of the noble alpha who had once ruled with wisdom and restraint. Valera watched in horror. This was what her absence had created. This was what her sister's poison had unleashed. A monster wearing her mate's skin, destroying everything in its path, unable to distinguish between enemy and ally. As if to prove her fear, the beast turned toward Corvin. My alpha," the second said, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. "I am not your enemy. I have brought you what you seek." The shadow wolf snarled, golden flames flickering in its gaze. It did not recognize him. Corvin held his ground, but Valera saw his legs trembling. The 3 wolves at his side had already shifted back to human form, prostrating themselves before their alpha in desperate submission. It would not be enough. The beast crouched, muscles coiling for a killing lunge. Valera stepped forward. "Calum." Her voice cut through the blood-mad haze like a blade through silk. The shadow wolf froze, its entire body going rigid, its blazing eyes snapping toward her with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. "Calum," she repeated, softer now. "I am here." The beast moved toward her, not attacking, not lunging, walking, each step deliberate, and each movement carrying a weight of desperate need that pressed against their bond, like a hand reaching through darkness. Valera did not retreat. She stood her ground as the creature approached, as its hot breath washed over her face, as its massive head lowered until those burning eyes were level with her own. "I am here," She whispered a third time, I am alive. I never stop being yours. The shadow wolf made a sound that was half growl, half whimper. Its nose pressed against her belly, gentle despite its size, feeling the lives that grew within her. The twins kicked. Both of them, hard enough that Violyra gasped. And something in those burning golden eyes shifted. The madness receded. The flames dimmed. For one precious moment she saw him. Really saw him. The man she loved staring out from the prison of his own feral nature. Valeera. The word emerged as a growl, barely intelligible, but unmistakably her name. Then, the moment shattered. An arrow whistled from the mist. Valeera did not see where it came from, only felt the impact as it struck her shoulder, the burning spread of poison as it entered her blood, the sudden weakness that buckled her knees. She fell. The shadow wolf's howl of rage shook the earth. Through dimming vision, Valeira saw a figure standing at the edge of the marsh, female, slender, silver gold hair streaming in the wind. Serelith. Her sister held a crossbow in her elegant hands, already reloading for a second shot. Foolish little shadow blood, Serelith called across the distance. Did you think I would trust mercenaries to finish the job? Some things require a personal touch. The shadow wolf lunged toward her, but Serelith was faster. She spoke a word that crackled with dark power, and chains of silver light erupted from the ground, wrapping around the beast's legs, its body, its throat. The creature crashed to the earth, thrashing against bonds that only tightened with each struggle. Corvin, Serelith continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I suppose I should thank you for leading me here. Your loyalty to my pathetic mate made you so predictable. Corvin snarled, but he too was frozen, his body locked in place by the binding spells Serelith had mastered alongside her poisons. Valeira pressed her hand to her wounded shoulder, feeling the poison spreading through her veins. Cold. So cold. And the twins had gone still, their movements ceasing as the toxin reached them. No, not her children. Not after everything. She would not let her sister take them. The shadows. Valeira gasped, reaching for the power she had touched moments before. Answer me. But the poison was blocking something, severing her connection to the darkness that had obeyed her will. She could feel it there, just beyond her reach, screaming to be released. She could not grasp it. Serelith approached with the leisure of a predator who knew its prey was cornered. She stopped before Valeira's crumpled form, looking down with an expression of theatrical pity. You know, I almost feel sorry for you, Serelith mused. You actually believed he loved you, believed that an alpha would choose a shadow-blooded mongrel over a woman of real power. She laughed. The claiming mark was clever, I admit. But marks can be removed. Bonds can be broken. And once you are dead, once those abominations inside you stop breathing, I will have everything. She raised the crossbow, aiming at Valeira's swollen belly. Any last words for your precious children? Valeira looked up at her sister, at the face she had known since childhood, at the beauty that had always overshadowed her own, at the cruelty that had festered behind kind smiles and sisterly embraces. Yes, Valeira said quietly. I forgive you. Serelith's finger hesitated on the trigger. What? I forgive you for the jealousy that poisoned your heart. I forgive you for the hatred you never had the courage to show. I forgive you for trying to destroy the only good things in my life. Valeira's voice grew stronger despite the poison burning through her. But my children will not. The twins moved. Not kicked. Not fluttered. Moved with power that did not belong to unborn lives, with magic that should have been impossible, with shadows that erupted from Valeira's womb like a second heartbeat finally allowed to beat. The darkness that Serelith's poison had blocked did not come from Valeira. It came from them. The shadows exploded outward in a wave of darkness. Serelith screamed as the force struck her, sending her flying backward into the marsh. Her crossbow discharged wild, the bolt vanishing into the mist. The chains binding Calum and Corvin dissolved like smoke in sunlight, and Valira felt her children's power flood through her veins, burning away the poison, filling her with strength she had never known she possessed. She rose to her feet. The wound in her shoulder sealed itself, new flesh knitting over torn muscle, the toxin evaporating from her blood as shadow magic cleansed what science could not cure. Around her, the darkness moved like a living thing, responding to her will, yet guided by something deeper. Her children were saving her. Even unborn, even unnamed, they had felt their mother dying and refused to allow it. Calum's wolf form began to shrink. The shift happened slowly, painfully, as the man fought to reclaim control from the beast that had ruled him for too long. Bones cracked and reformed. Fur receded into skin. The blazing golden eyes dimmed to amber, calm returning as his wolf settled into peace. When the transformation completed, the Alpha of Ashenmoor knelt in the blood-stained mud, naked and trembling and more vulnerable than Valira had ever seen him. He looked up at her with eyes full of tears. "You are alive," he breathed. "You are alive, and you are—" His gaze dropped to her belly, to the swell that had not existed when he last held her, to the lives growing within her that he had not known about, had not been told about, had been denied by poison and politics and a sister's hatred. "Twins," Valira said quietly, "your heirs." Calum made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. He crawled toward her through the mud, reaching for her with hands that shook violently. "May I?" he asked. The question broke something in Valira's chest. This man, this Alpha who had just torn apart a dozen assassins, was asking permission to touch his own children. She took his hand and pressed it to her stomach. The twins moved immediately, responding to their father's presence with kicks that came from opposite sides. Calum's eyes went wide. His palm flattened against her belly, feeling, searching, his expression shifting through wonder and grief and joy and heartbreak. "I did not know," he whispered. "Valira, I did not know. If I had—" "You would have done what?" The words emerged sharper than she intended. 4 months of grief and fury could not be erased by a single moment of tenderness. "You chose my sister. Before the entire pack, you named her Luna while I watched from the shadows." "I did not choose her." Calum's voice cracked. "I would never—" "I saw you. You saw a puppet." He gripped her hands with desperate strength. "You saw a hollow shell that wore my face while Serelith's poison controlled my every word. I remember nothing of that ceremony. Nothing of the days that followed. The first thing I knew after drinking that cursed wine was waking in my chambers with your scent fading from the castle and your sister in my bed." Valira flinched. "She was in your bed?" "I threw her through the wall." Calum's eyes flared gold briefly, then settled back to amber. "I felt the bond screaming, felt you slipping away, and when I saw her there, pretending to be my mate, my wolf nearly killed her on the spot." "Why didn't he?" The question hung between them, raw and unfair, and desperately needed. "Because I needed answers," Calum said quietly. "Because I needed to know what had been done to me, and who had done it, and where you had gone. And because some part of me, some broken, desperate part, hoped that she might tell me where to find you." "Did she?" She laughed. His jaw tightened. "She laughed and told me you were dead, that you had thrown yourself from the eastern cliffs rather than live with the knowledge of my betrayal. I believed her, Valira. For 3 days, I believed her, and those 3 days nearly destroyed me." Valira remembered those days, the flight through frozen forests, the desperate search for shelter, the certainty that she had been abandoned, discarded, forgotten. They had both been in hell. Different hells, but hell nonetheless. "How did you learn the truth?" she asked. "The bond." Calum pressed his hand to his chest. "I could still feel you. Faint, distant, but alive. My wolf knew. He always knew. And when I finally accepted that Sarilith had lied, when I finally listened to what my instincts had been screaming since I woke from that poisoned haze, he trailed off, unable to continue. You searched, Valera finished. I tore apart the kingdom. His voice was hollow. Every village, every town, every corner of every territory that owed allegiance to Ashenmoor. I offered gold, titles, anything. I threatened. I begged. I destroyed. I know, the traitors brought word. And still I could not find you. Tears streamed down his face. 4 months. 4 months of hell, Valera. 4 months of feeling you through the bond, knowing you were alive, unable to reach you. My wolf went mad with it. I went mad with it. A rustle from the marsh interrupted them. Sarilith emerged from the mist, her beautiful face twisted with fury, her silver-gold hair tangled with mud and blood. The shadows had wounded her, leaving burns across her arms that smoked in the morning light. But she was still standing. And in her hand, she held something that made Kylam go rigid with fear. A vial of shimmering liquid. The same poison she had used on the night of the Luna ceremony. Did you really think it would be that easy? Sarilith's voice rang across the marsh, high and mocking. A tearful reunion? A few pretty words and everything forgiven? Kylam moved to shield Valera with his body, but his legs buckled beneath him. The shift from full feral to human had cost him more than he could afford. His body was weakened, his wolf exhausted, his reserves depleted by months of searching and the battle that had just ended. He could barely stand. Sister, Valera said, stepping around him despite his growl of protest. Put down the vial. Sister? Sarilith laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut. You dare call me sister? After everything you stole from me? I stole nothing from you. You stole him! The scream echoed across the water. From the moment he saw you, he never looked at anyone else. I was there first, Valera. I came to Ashenmoor to make my fortune, to find a powerful mate, to become something more than a seamstress's bastard daughter. And then you appeared with your shadow-cursed eyes and your pathetic wounded bird routine, and he forgot I existed. Valera stared at her sister with dawning comprehension. You loved him. I deserved him. Sarilith's composure cracked, revealing the jealousy that had festered beneath her beauty for years. I did everything right. I learned to walk properly, to speak properly, and to present myself as a woman worthy of an alpha's attention. And what did you do? You stumbled through the forest gathering herbs like a peasant, and he looked at you like you were the moon itself. That is not love, Sarilith. That is obsession. Call it what you will. Her sister raised the vial. When you are dead, when his bond to you is severed permanently, he will turn to me. He will have no choice. I will be there to comfort him, to guide him, to rule beside him as I was always meant to. Kylam laughed. The sound was broken, bitter, exhausted, but unmistakably genuine. You understand nothing, he said from his knees. I would rather die than touch you. I would rather go feral and be put down like an animal than let you anywhere near me or my pack. The bond between true mates cannot be replaced, Sarilith. Kill her, and you kill any chance of controlling me. Sarilith's eyes flickered with uncertainty. He's lying, she said, but her voice wavered. The scholars say. The scholars study bonds from the outside. Valera took another step toward her sister. They do not know what it feels like to have someone's soul woven into your own, to feel their heartbeat as clearly as your own, to know in every cell of your body that you were made for each other. The shadows at her feet stirred, responding to her emotions. I felt it even when I thought he had betrayed me, Valera continued. Even when I believed every word you had planted in my mind. The mark you thought would fade never stopped burning because the bond never stopped existing. It cannot be broken by poison or politics or your petty jealousy. Sarilith's hand trembled around the vial. I can still kill you. Without a body, the bond. Do you truly believe you can kill me? Valyra raised her hand, and the shadows answered. They rose around her like wings of darkness, spreading outward in patterns that seemed to contain stars. The power her children had unlocked flowed through her veins, and for the first time in her life, Valyra did not suppress it. She embraced it. "I have spent my entire life hiding what I am," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that belonged to ancient things. "Hiding from the word you used to whisper when Mother was not listening. Shadow-cursed, monster, abomination." Each word brought the darkness closer to Sarilith, who stumbled backward through the marsh. "But I am not the monster here." Valyra's eyes blazed with silver light. "You are. You poisoned the man I love. You tried to murder his children. You have spent 4 months letting him believe I was dead, while his wolf tore him apart from the inside." The shadows wrapped around Sarilith's wrist, forcing her hand open. The vial fell into the water and disappeared beneath the surface. "Do you know what the pack does to those who betray their alpha?" Valyra asked softly. "Do you know what happens to wolves who use forbidden poison against their own kind?" Sarilith's composure finally shattered. "Please, Valyra, please. I am your sister. We share blood. You tried to murder my children. I was desperate. I only wanted... You wanted what was not yours to take." Valyra stood before her sister, close enough to touch, the shadows swirling between them like a living barrier. "And now you will face the consequences." "Valyra." Caelim's voice, weak but determined, drew her attention. He had managed to rise to his feet, swaying with exhaustion, his amber eyes fixed on her with something like wonder. "She is yours to judge," he said. "By the old laws, a mate who has been wronged may determine the fate of the one who wronged her. Whatever you decide, I will support." Valyra looked at her sister, at the fear in those beautiful eyes, at the woman who had tormented her since childhood, who had stolen her happiness, who had tried to murder her children. The shadows screamed for blood. But Valyra had not survived 4 months of exile, had not carried twins through winter roads and marshland cottages, had not fought her way back to the man she loved, just to become the monster her sister had always accused her of being. "You will live," Valyra said. Sarilith's eyes widened with desperate hope, but not as a wolf. The hope died. "The shadow magic can sever the connection between a wolf and their human half," Valyra continued. "I have always known this, always feared it, and always suppressed the knowledge because I did not want to become a weapon." She raised her hand. "But for you, sister, I will make an exception." The shadows plunged into Sarilith's chest. Her sister screamed as darkness invaded her body, searching for the thread that connected her to her wolf, the bond that made her more than human. It found that thread, wrapped around it, and with a single vicious pull, severed it completely. Sarilith collapsed into the marsh, her screams fading to whimpers, her body convulsing as something essential was torn from her soul. When she finally stilled, she looked up at Valyra with eyes that held no amber, no wolf, and no power. Only human, only empty. "You will live out your days as what you always accused me of being," Valyra said quietly. "An abomination. A creature without a wolf, living among those who will never accept you. And every day, for the rest of your pathetic existence, you will remember what you lost because of your jealousy." She turned away from her broken sister. Corvin's wolves bound Sarilith's wrists and hauled her upright. She would be dragged back to Ashenmoor to face the pack's judgment, not as a criminal worthy of execution, but as a cautionary tale. A wolfless creature who had gambled everything and lost. Caelim was watching her with an expression she could not read. "You showed mercy," he said finally. "I showed justice." Valyra moved toward him, her shadows receding, her power settling back into something manageable. Death would have been too easy. Now she must live with the consequences of her choices. Caelim reached for her. She let him pull her into his arms. "I love you," He whispered against her hair. I have loved you since the moment I saw you in that forest, gathering herbs with dirt on your face and sunlight in your eyes. I loved you when I thought I had lost you forever. I will love you until the stars burn out and the moon falls from the sky. Valira pressed her face into his chest, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek, his arms around her body, his presence filling the hollow space that had ached for 4 endless months. I love you too, she whispered. Even when I hated you, even when I wanted to forget you, I never stopped loving you. The twins kicked, as if in approval, and somewhere in the distance, wolves began to howl. The journey back to Ashenmoor took 2 days. Caleb refused to let Valira out of his sight, refused to let her walk when he could carry her, refused to sleep until exhaustion pulled him under, and even then only with his body curled protectively around hers. His wolf, finally at peace after months of feral torment, purred constantly in the back of his mind. Mate, pack, pups, safe. Valira allowed the coddling because she understood the need behind it. She felt the same desperate hunger for his presence, the same bone-deep relief every time she woke and found him still there. They talked during the journey. He told her about the nights he had spent howling at the moon, calling her name until his throat bled. About the way his wolf had nearly killed 3 council members who suggested he accept Sarilith as his true Luna. About the slow descent into madness that had only been halted by the faint, persistent pulse of their bond. She told him about the exile, the false name, the cottage at the edge of the marsh where she had learned to survive alone, about the nights she had heard his voice in her dreams, calling her name, and believed she was losing her mind. My wolf was reaching for you, Caleb said quietly. Every time I slept, he searched through the bond. I thought they were only dreams. They kept me alive, Valira admitted. Even when I hated you, hearing your voice reminded me that I was not alone. On the second morning, they crested the final hill before Ashenmoor and stopped. Smoke rose from the capital, not cooking fires or forge smoke, but the thick black columns of buildings burning. The great banner that should have displayed the Shadow Wolf crest had been torn down, replaced by the serpent sigil of the Elder Prime's faction. No, Corvin breathed from behind them. They would not dare. Who? Valira demanded. Caleb's face had turned to stone. The Elder Prime, Sarilith's ally on the council. He must have moved when word reached him that I had found you. Moved to do what? To take the throne before I could reclaim it. Fresh howls rose from the city, but these were not howls of celebration. They were howls of battle, of death, of wolves fighting wolves in the streets of the capital. How many warriors remain loyal to you? Valira asked. Enough. Caleb's eyes blazed gold as his wolf surged with renewed fury. But the Elder Prime controls the ceremonial guard. If he has declared himself regent, then he will have hostages. Corvin's voice was grim. Anyone who openly supported you during the search, anyone who questioned Sarilith's right to rule, he will use them as leverage. Valira's hand moved to her belly. How many? Dozens, perhaps. The servants who helped me search. The warriors who refused to stop looking. The healer who tended me after Sarilith's poisoning. The healer, old Margeth, who had delivered half the pups in Ashenmoor. Who had confirmed Valira's pregnancy with gentle hands and kind words. Who had promised to keep the secret until Valira was ready to tell her mate. We have to save them, Valira said. You cannot enter that city. Caleb's voice hardened. If the Elder Prime captures you, if we do nothing, innocent wolves die. She met his gaze without flinching. I will not let others suffer for my sake, not again. Caleb stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Fierce, proud, full of a love that made her heart ache. My Luna, he murmured. Even now, you think of others before yourself. He turned to the wolves assembled behind them, 30 warriors who had joined them during the journey, their eyes bright with loyalty and rage. The Elder Prime believes he has won, Calum announced. He believes his treachery has succeeded, that his false authority will go unchallenged. He reached for Valera's hand. He is wrong. The battle for Ashenmoor raged through the morning. Calum's loyal wolves crashed against the Elder Prime's ceremonial guard with a fury born of 4 months of helpless rage. Streets that had once rung with commerce now echoed with snarls and screams. Blood ran between the cobblestones. But progress was slow. The ceremonial guard had fortified the throne room, using the hostages as shields against any direct assault. Every time Calum's forces pushed forward, the Elder Prime's wolves retreated behind a wall of innocent lives. By noon, the situation had become a siege. "We cannot wait them out," Corvin reported. "The Prime has threatened to execute 1 hostage every hour until you surrender yourself." Valera watched from the command post Calum had established in an abandoned merchant's house. Her hands pressed to her belly where the twins had grown increasingly agitated. They could feel her fear, her frustration, her desperate need to act. "How many hostages?" she asked. 43 confirmed, including the healer Margeth and several children too young to shift. Children. The Elder Prime was threatening to murder children. Valera rose from her seat. "Where are you going?" Calum demanded, his hand catching her arm. "To end this." "Valera. He wants you." She turned to face him, her shadows stirring at her feet. "He wants the Alpha, because the Alpha is the only one who can legitimize his claim to power, but he does not know about me, does not know what I am or what I carry." "You cannot seriously be suggesting—" "I am suggesting that I walk into that throne room and offer myself as a hostage in exchange for the children." Her voice did not waver. "I am suggesting that while his attention is focused on me, your wolves find another way in. He will kill you the moment he realizes who you are. Then I will have to be very persuasive about who I am not." Calum's grip tightened on her arm. Through the bond, she felt his terror, his fury, his desperate need to protect her. But beneath all of that, she felt something else. Trust. "The Western Tower," he said finally. "There is a passage from the servants' quarters that opens behind the throne. My wolves can reach it in 20 minutes if they move now." "Then I need to give you 20 minutes." Valera leaned up and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was fierce, desperate, full of everything they had not yet had time to say. "Come back to me," Calum whispered against her mouth. "Always," she promised. Then she walked out the door and into the burning city. The ceremonial guard found her within minutes. She let them drag her through the streets, let them parade her before the terrified citizens of Ashenmoor, let them believe she was nothing but a frightened pregnant woman caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The throne room was vast and cold, its ancient stones echoing with the whimpers of the hostages huddled along the walls. 43 wolves, Valera counted, old and young, warriors and servants, all of them bound, all of them gagged, all of them watching with terrified eyes as the guards threw her at the Elder Prime's feet. "What is this?" The Prime was ancient, his body withered, his eyes sharp with cruel intelligence. He sat on the Shadow Wolf throne like it belonged to him, wearing robes that bore the serpent sigil rather than the pack's crest. "A woman we found in the merchant district," the guard captain reported. "She claims to be a healer, but she was asking about the hostages." The Elder Prime studied Valera with narrowed eyes. "A healer? In your condition? Who sent you?" "No one sent me." Valera kept her voice meek, her eyes lowered. "I came to Ashenmoor to find work. I did not know about the troubles. Please, I only want to help the wounded." "Help the wounded?" The Prime laughed. "How noble, how pathetic." He gestured to his guards. "Put her with the others. Perhaps the Alpha will think twice about his assault if he knows his people's precious healer is among the condemned." They dragged her toward the hostages. Valera went willingly, her shadow magic coiled tight within her, waiting for the moment to strike. The children were clustered near old Margeth, who looked up as Valira approached with recognition that she quickly concealed. "Be ready," Valira whispered as she was thrown to her knees beside them. "When the shadows move, run for the western door." Margeth's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Then she nodded. The minutes crawled past. Valira counted heartbeats, feeling Calem's presence growing closer through the bond. His wolves were in position. They were waiting for her signal. She just needed one distraction. The Elder Prime provided it himself. "Bring forward the first execution," he commanded. "Let us show the Alpha that I am not bluffing." The guards moved toward the children. Valira acted. The shadows exploded from her body with a force that surprised even her. They swept across the throne room like a living tide, knocking guards off their feet, shattering the bonds that held the hostages, creating chaos where order had reigned moments before. "The western door!" she screamed. "Run!" The hostages fled. But Valira could not follow. The power she had unleashed was draining her, pulling something vital from her core. She had not been trained for this, had no idea how to wield her gift without burning herself alive. Her vision blurred, her legs buckled, and the Elder Prime stood before her with a silver blade in his withered hand. "Shadowblood," he hissed. "I should have known. Only a monster could have captured the Alpha's heart." He raised the blade. Valira could not move, could not defend herself, could only watch death descend toward her and the children she carried. Then something happened that she did not expect. The twins moved, not kicked, not fluttered. Moved with power that should have been impossible, with magic that belonged to ancient wolves, with shadows that erupted from her womb and wrapped around her body like armor. Pain exploded through Valira as her bones began to shift. She screamed, but the sound that emerged was no longer human. Fur pushed through her skin, dark as midnight, shot through with patterns of silver starlight that seemed to contain entire constellations. Her body stretched, reformed, and became something new, something that had never existed before. The shift completed in a surge of light and shadow. Where a pregnant woman had knelt, a wolf now stood. Not massive like Calem's feral form, but something else. Something ethereal. Her fur seemed to absorb light and emit it simultaneously, creating an effect like looking at the night sky given physical form. And she was no longer pregnant. The twins, somehow, impossibly, had joined with her in the shift. She could feel them inside her still, their consciousnesses merged with her wolf, their power flowing through her veins. They had triggered the transformation to save her life, and they had given her the strength to end this. The Elder Prime staggered backward. "What are you?" Valira's wolf did not answer with words. She lunged. The silver blade swung toward her, but her shadow starlight form seemed to pass through it, reforming on the other side. Her jaws closed around the Prime's throat, and she tasted ancient blood, corrupt blood, and the blood of a wolf who had betrayed everything his position should have protected. She bit down. The Elder Prime died with a wet gurgle, his body crumpling to the throne room floor. Behind her, the western door burst open. Calem in wolf form, massive and dark, followed by 30 loyal warriors who spread through the room like a tide of fur and fang. But there was nothing left to fight. The ceremonial guard, seeing their leader dead and a creature of shadow and starlight standing over his corpse, dropped their weapons and submitted. Valira's wolf turned toward her mate. The shift back to human was easier than she expected, guided by the twins' power, cushioned by their magic. When she stood before Calem in her human form once more, she was trembling but whole, and still very much pregnant. "The children," Calem breathed, shifting back himself, his eyes returning to calm amber. "I saw you shift." "How?" "They helped." Valira pressed her hands to her belly, feeling the twins' movements, their exhaustion, and their triumph. "They merged with my wolf to give me the strength I needed. They saved us all." Calem fell to his knees before her. "My Luna," he whispered. "My heart." my everything. He pressed his forehead to her belly, and tears streamed down his face. Around them, wolves began to howl. Not battle howls, victory howls, celebration howls, the sound of a pack reuniting around its true leaders. The Elder Prime was dead, the hostages were safe, and the Shadow Wolf throne waited for its rightful rulers to claim it. The coronation took place beneath a full moon. Every wolf in Ashenmoor had gathered in the great courtyard, their faces turned toward the dais where their alpha stood beside the woman who had fought through exile and betrayal and assassination to reach this moment. Valeira wore a gown of midnight blue, embroidered with silver threads that caught the moonlight like captured stars. Her belly, now heavy with twins who were due within weeks, pressed against the fabric. She had never felt more beautiful. Wolves of Ashenmoor. Calem's voice rang across the assembly. 4 months ago, a great wrong was done in this courtyard. A woman was crowned Luna through treachery and poison, while the true mate of your alpha was driven into exile. The crowd murmured with shame and anger. Tonight, we correct that wrong. He turned to face her, and the love in his amber eyes made her heart swell with emotion. Valeira, you came to me with nothing but the clothes on your back and a gift for healing. You saw the man beneath the crown when others saw only power. You gave me your heart when I had done nothing to deserve it. His hand found hers. And when I failed you, when I was used as a weapon against everything we had built, you did not break. You survived. You protected our children. You found your way back to me when any other wolf would have surrendered to despair. He lifted her hand to his lips. You are my mate, my Luna, the mother of my heirs and the keeper of my heart. Will you accept this pack as your own? Will you rule beside me, not as my shadow, but as my equal? Valeira looked out at the sea of faces. Wolves who had once served her tea when she was a nobody. Wolves who had searched for her through 4 months of winter. Wolves who had fought and bled to see this moment come to pass. I will, she said. The ancient words that followed were spoken by old Margeth, who had insisted on performing the ceremony despite her age. Vows were exchanged, promises made. And when the ritual was complete, Calem tilted his head, baring his throat to her in the gesture of ultimate submission. The bond is already sealed in my heart, he whispered. But let it be witnessed by the moon and the pack. Claim me, Valeira. Make it complete. She had dreamed of this moment for 4 months, had imagined it in her cold cottage, alone and grieving, certain it would never come to pass. Now, with the moon bright above and the pack watching below, she leaned forward and pressed her teeth to the place where his neck met his shoulder. She bit down. The bond exploded between them. Every memory, every emotion, every secret fear and desperate hope, all of it flowed between them in a torrent of shared experience. She felt his love wrap around her like armor, felt his joy at the children growing within her, felt his fierce determination to spend every remaining day of his existence proving himself worthy of her trust, and he felt her. The grief she had carried through 4 months of exile. The moment she had first felt the twins move. The terror and triumph of her transformation in the throne room. The love that had never wavered, even in her darkest moments. When she finally released him, they were both weeping. My Luna, Calem breathed. My Alpha, she answered. The pack erupted in howls of celebration. 3 weeks later, as spring painted the mountains in shades of green and gold, Valeira gave birth to twins. A boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's shadow magic, who would grow to become the greatest healer Ashenmoor had ever known. A girl with her mother's silver-starred eyes and her father's fierce protective instincts, who would one day lead the pack's warriors with wisdom and strength. Calem held them both with tears streaming down his face. His massive hands impossibly gentle as he cradled his children for the first time. Thank you, he whispered to Valeira, who lay exhausted but radiant in their bed, for fighting for us, for believing when I gave you every reason not to. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the claiming mark on his throat. "I never stop believing," she said softly. "Even in the darkest moments, the bond kept calling me home." Outside their window, the wolves of Ashenmoor lifted their voices in celebration, and in the great tapestry of the pack's history, a new chapter was woven. The story of a Shadowblood healer who became a Luna, of an Alpha who tore apart his realm to find his true mate, of twins born from a love that could not be broken by poison or betrayal, or even the cruelest schemes of a jealous sister. They had found each other against all odds, and they would never be parted again. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.